10 places to find positive geared property for sale. Hi, I'm Ryan and I'm from cashflowinvestor.com.au, and in this video I'm going to show you the 10 places in Australia where you can find positive geared property for sale. This is going to be an epic video, so stay tuned. Number 1, rural towns. There's a lower cost of housing in rural towns generally, and sometimes you can get upwards of an 11% rental yield. Now I'm talking about rural town centres, so these are places like Wagga Wagga, Dubbo, Ballarat and Victoria, all these bigger kind of town centres where it's still a town. Not everyone has farms, but a lot of people come in from surrounding areas into these towns as well to shop and things like that. So these are a good place to start looking. Number 2, blocks of units. You can actually buy entire blocks of units, and generally I've only really seen these in, again, rural areas, but rather than buying a single unit in a block, you can actually buy the entire block and get a good rental yield from that. You pay no strata fees and you've got diversified income streams, because if one unit is empty out of 10, you've still got 9 incomes coming in. Whereas if you just own one house and that's empty, then 100% of your income is gone. Number 3, in the inner city, believe it or not, but you can actually find positive geared property in the inner city. However, it can be expensive. I like to look at studio flats and 1-bedroom apartments, as these tend to have higher rental yields than the 2, 3 or 4-bedroom places in the city. Number 4, car parks. You can actually rent out parking separately to make a positive cash flow or to increase your rental yield of your property, or you can buy designated car spots. Often parking stations will sell off some of their car spots to make money to help pay for the station and things like that, and you can then actually rent that out. Say it's in a city, you can rent that out to a company where their employees can actually park there, or you can rent that out to a high-level executive who wants a car spot or something like that. But always check the fees and always do your figures on these. There were new strata, new costs that came in a few years ago that made this less profitable, but you still can find positive cash flow car parks. Number 5 is in commercial real estate, which can generate a high rental yield. In some cases, the tenant pays all the fees as well. So you're talking council rates, you're talking electricity, you're talking refits and maintaining the building. So this can actually lower your costs, and by buying commercial, if they're paying all those costs and all you got to cover is your mortgage, then it's easier to become positive cash flow. You need a bigger deposit, however. Generally, we're looking at about 30%, maybe more in rural areas. Number 6, in cheaper properties. Cheaper properties I've found can generate a higher rental yield than the more expensive properties in the same area. So say you're in a street and you've got one property that's really cheap, not as good obviously, but then you've got a property in the street that's more expensive. The cheaper property will often get a higher rental yield, and if you can fix them up, then you can get even better rental yields from them. Number 7 is popular suburbs. If you find a decent sized house, you can create a dual occupancy by splitting that house in two and turning a 4-bedroom house into 2 2-bedroom flats, and you can then get more income than you would if you rented out the house by itself separately. Obviously there's laws you've got to comply with and stuff like that. You could buy a property with a granny flat and rent that out to increase the rental yield as well. There's a lot of people doing this who are actually building granny flats, and there's companies out there who specifically build granny flats for these popular suburbs where you can actually increase your rental yield there. Number 8 is smaller country towns. So rather than those rural town centres, I'm talking about towns of maybe 2,000 people or something like that. Much higher rental yields than most inner city suburbs and things like that. And sometimes there can actually be a queue of people waiting for a suitable rental. I was talking to people in a country town when I used to go out there for work, and they were saying that it's really hard to find good rentals, and then there's actually a queue for people with good rentals. So obviously if you have a good property for a good price, people will snap it up, but there is the risk because smaller population equals smaller demand. So if your property doesn't fit what people want, or there's not people looking at that time, then it can lay vacant for some time. Number 9 is rundown properties. These will often sell for less than the surrounding properties which aren't run down. if you can do it up to a good standard, then you can get a higher rental yield than the suburb usually offers. So rundown properties are something to look at as well. And number 10, you can actually find positive cash flow property or create positive cash flow property anywhere in Australia using what's called owner finance or vendor finance. It also goes by some other names as well. What you do is you buy a property and you then sell it, you flip it for a higher price. But instead of cash, the buyer assumes a loan with you. So instead of them going to the bank, getting a loan and then paying you all that cash, you actually provide the loan to them. You collect the payments and you can charge a higher interest rate and a higher sale price so that you've got more cash coming in than you do going out in expenses. So they're the 10 places to find positive cash flow property in Australia. If you want to find more positive cash flow properties and you want more details on that, go to cashflowinvestor.com.au, sign up for our daily emails where I'll teach you how to find positive cash flow properties all over Australia. Best of all, it's absolutely free. So head over to cashflowinvestor.com.au and enter your name and email address right now.